Welcome to our deep dive into the immigration permit paradox. First, we will set the stage by explaining how people with temporary status can end up with shorter work permits than some recent arrivals. Then, we will unpack why the 5-year permits existed, why they changed, and what risks are often misunderstood. By the end, you will better understand the system's constraints and what steps to take to protect yourself. Let's begin. Next, here's our roadmap. We will outline the big picture, clarify what an employment authorization document actually represents, walk through the recent policy changes, compare how different groups experience the system, flag court-related risks and identification issues, and give practical steps to stay on top of deadlines. We will also include short quizzes to test your understanding and finish with key takeaways. Before we proceed, a critical disclaimer. Nothing in this video is legal advice. Immigration rules and procedures change, can vary by case, and require individualized analysis. For your specific situation, consult a qualified immigration attorney or accredited representative. Use this video as a starting point for understanding, not as a substitute for legal counsel. Now let's set the context. For many years, people living in the United States with renewable temporary status often received work permits valid for about 2 years. Meanwhile, some recent entrants tied to pending asylum cases briefly received 5-year EADs. This can seem backward or unfair. The key explanation lies in administrative backlog management rather than any preferential treatment. Agencies issued longer permits to cut down on renewal volume and paperwork, not to grant special stability. Moving on, let's define the EAD. An employment authorization document allows you to work legally but does not, by itself, provide permanent immigration status. The EAD rests on an underlying basis, such as a temporary program, a pending asylum claim, or another pending application. When an EAD expires, you generally must renew it on time, which requires tracking deadlines and gathering documents. Importantly, even a longer-dated EAD does not guarantee long-term safety, because it remains tied to the underlying legal foundation. If the underlying case is denied or terminated, the EAD can lose its legal basis immediately. Next, visualize the timeline. First, before the backlog relief approach, many groups commonly received around 2-year work permits. Then, during the backlog relief period, some individuals with pending asylum cases received 5-year EADs to reduce the number of renewals inundating the system. Finally, administrative changes scaled these back, with many asylum pending renewals now closer to approximately 18 months. The important takeaway is that these durations are administrative levers that can shift over time. Now, let's compare experiences. Long-term residents with renewable temporary status typically receive around 2-year EADs and often have deep community ties. However, their identification documents in some states may contain language such as legal presence, no lawful status, which can draw unwanted attention. Meanwhile, some recent arrivals with pending asylum once received 5-year EADs during a brief policy window, but renewals are generally now closer to 18 months. Their situation can be more precarious because their work authorization relies on an asylum claim that has not been adjudicated. Missing a court hearing can trigger an immediate removal order, and a denied claim can topple the foundation of work authorization. Let's quantify typical durations with a high-level table. Long-term temporary programs often issue around 2-year EADs, though specifics vary. During a prior backlog relief period, some asylum-pending applicants received up to 5-year EADs. But that approach was scaled back. Current trends commonly show around 18 months for asylum-pending renewals, though rules can change. Other categories vary widely. Across the board, the EAD is only as strong as its underlying status or pending case. Treat this table as illustrative, and consult current official guidance for your category. Moving forward, here are practical steps. Put every expiration, court date, and filing deadline on your calendar with multiple reminders. Start renewals early by preparing documents 6 to 7 months in advance when possible. Monitor mail and online portals for notices and requests for evidence. Report address changes promptly using the appropriate process. Consult a qualified attorney or accredited representative, and avoid unauthorized consultants. Keep copies of everything, filings, receipts, and decisions, in one secure location. Finally, remember that an EAD is not permanent residency. Do not confuse work permission with permanent legal status. Next, we must highlight court-related risks. For those whose EADs depend on a pending asylum claim, the work authorization exists so long as the claim remains active. Missing a court hearing often results in an in absentia removal order. If the asylum claim is denied, the EAD loses its foundation. Importantly, the printed validity date on an EAD does not override a removal order or cure a missed hearing. Court obligations always take priority over the expiration date on the card. Here's a quick quiz. The question is, what was the main reason some recent arrivals received 5-year EADs for a period of time? Option A, to grant them permanent stability and priority treatment. Option B, to reduce renewal volume and ease administrative backlogs. Option C, because asylum approval was guaranteed. Option D, to replace state IDs with federal IDs. You may pause the video now to think about your answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is to reduce renewal volume and ease administrative backlogs. Agencies extended the validity period to decrease the number of applications they had to process during a heavy backlog. It was not an award of permanence or a guarantee of future approval. Here's your second question. If an asylum claim tied to an EAD is ultimately denied, what happens to the work authorization? Option A, it remains valid until the printed expiration date. Option B, it automatically converts into permanent residency. Option C, it loses its legal foundation and may end immediately. Option D, it turns into a state-only permit. You may pause the video now to consider your answer. We will review the correct choice in the next section. The correct answer is that it loses its legal foundation and may end immediately. The EAD is dependent on the underlying case or status. Once that foundation is gone, the authorization to work can end, even if the card itself lists a later expiration date. Let's recap key points. An EAD is not permanent immigration status. It is tied to a separate underlying basis. 5-year EADs were primarily an administrative response to backlogs rather than preferential treatment. Asylum-pending EAD renewals are now commonly closer to approximately 18 months. Court obligations and orders override the date printed on your card. Above all, consult qualified legal help and track every deadline carefully. Before we finish, let's examine identification. In some states, IDs issued to people in established administrative programs include phrasing such as legal presence, no lawful status, which can invite scrutiny. Meanwhile, IDs issued to people based on recent EADs may not carry such limiting language, reflecting a pending federal process instead. This creates a confusing result. Individuals who have lived and worked here for years may face more visible labeling than newcomers. It is a mismatch created by overlapping federal and state systems rather than a judgment of merit. To summarize, the system often relies on temporary administrative fixes rather than comprehensive, permanent legislative solutions. Both long-term residents and recent arrivals are navigating instability. Your best defense is to obtain qualified legal guidance, vigilantly track every deadline, and keep complete documentation. Treat the EAD as a temporary tool rather than a promise of permanence. Finally, thank you for watching. If this video clarified the immigration permit paradox, please like, share, and subscribe to help others find it. In the comments, share your experiences and questions so we can cover what matters most to you. Stay informed, stay prepared, and take care.